Hello, and welcome to the mini lecture on organic functional groups. The properties and reactions of many organic compounds are due to the presence of characteristic groups of atoms known as functional groups. Functional groups get their name from the fact that they give each organic molecule their function. 5 functional groups are important in human physiology. These are the hydroxyl, carboxyl, amino, methyl, and phosphate groups. Hydroxyl groups are polar. They are components of all 4 types of organic compounds. Hello, and welcome to the mini lecture on organic functional groups. The properties and reactions of many organic compounds are due to the presence of characteristic groups of atoms known as functional groups. Functional groups get their name from the fact that they give each organic molecule their function. We will look more closely at functional groups in this lecture. Single, double, and triple bonds are considered to be functional groups. We discussed how to name organic molecules which have each of these 3 types of bonds in the last lecture. Halogens sometimes replace hydrogen in the hydrocarbon, and these are called alkyl halides. And then there are a whole slew of other functional groups. Let us delve deeper. There are many different functional groups. Here is a very busy snapshot for all of them. The simplest ones we have already covered. They are the names of alkanes, alkenes, and alkynes. Let us consider each of the rest roughly in order of complexity. Halocarbons are hydrocarbons in which hydrogen is replaced or substituted for a halogen. The prefix for these functional groups are just the root of the halogen name. The example here shows 1-bromoethane. An alcohol functional group is an OH, which takes the place of a hydrogen in a hydrocarbon. The suffix which indicates alcohol groups in hydrocarbons is -ol. The example shows methanol. A ketone functional group is a double-bonded oxygen which takes the place of 2 hydrogens on a carbon, that is in the interior of the hydrocarbon chain, not on either end. The suffix which indicates ketones is -one. The example shows propanone. An ether function group is when an oxygen takes the place of a CH2 in the interior of a hydrocarbon chain, not on either end. In the case of ethers, the 2 hydrocarbon chains which are bound to the oxygen are alkyl substituents, and the name ends with space ether. An aldehyde is similar to a ketone, except an aldehyde has the double-bonded oxygen on the carbon on either end. The suffix for aldehydes is -al, and the example shown is ethanal. A carboxylic acid has a carbon on either end of the chain, which has a double-bonded oxygen and an OH group bound to it. The example shown is ethanoic acid. An ester is somewhat of an amalgamation of a ketone and an ether. It is a hydrocarbon in which an interior carbon has a double-bonded oxygen, and that carbon is also bound to an oxygen. The oxygen has a hydrocarbon chain bound to it, as well as the carbon with the double-bonded oxygen. The suffix for esters is -ate. The example shows methyl ethanoate. An amide is a hydrocarbon in which an interior carbon has a double-bonded oxygen and is also bound to a nitrogen. The nitrogen can have 1 or 2 hydrogens and 1 or 2 hydrocarbons bound to it, in addition to the double-bonded oxygen carbon. The suffix for amides is -amide. The example shown is ethanamide. And lastly, an amine occurs when an NH2 replaces a hydrogen in a hydrocarbon. The nitrogen can have one or two hydrogens and one or two hydrocarbons bound to it, in addition to the bond to the main carbon chain. For both amides and amines, one must specify how many carbon chains are attached to the nitrogen. We will discuss this further in a later slide. There will often be times when an organic molecule has more than one type of functional group present. In these cases, there is a priority system that sets the name for the molecule. The functional group with the highest priority, according to the list shown here, will set the suffix for the molecule name. Each of the lower priority functional groups will be given a prefix in the molecule name. If you go on to take organic chemistry, you will be required to learn this priority order. For this class, if you need the list, it will be given. As a reminder, when there is more than one functional group in a molecule's name, alphabetize them by the first letter of the functional group, not the Greek number prefix. Alcohols are named by adding the suffix "-al" to the stem of the parent. Specify by the carbon number where the OH group is attached. From left to right, the first molecule has one carbon in the carbon chain with an alcohol functional group. It is called methanol. No one is needed as there is only one carbon. The second has three carbons in the main chain with an alcohol on a carbon on the end. It is called 1-propanol. The third also has three carbons in the chain, but the alcohol is attached to the center carbon. This is 2-propanol. And the last has four carbons in the chain with an alcohol attached to carbon number 2. It is called 2-butanol. Ketones occur when an interior carbon is double bonded to an oxygen. The suffix for ketones is -one. The first example has three carbons in its chain. It is called 2-propanone. The second example has four carbons in its chain. It is called 2-butanone. To hear the rest of this mini lecture, please go now to view part 2.